This is another episode of another presentation for Crash Course. Today we have Chase Bethea with us, audio composer for many games. I had to go over that resume a little while back. I just want to say thank you for taking the time out to chat with us a little bit. All right, and with that, I think the floor is yours, Chase. And yeah.
Thank you, Glenn, for that awesome intro. Really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here with the Jamaica Game Developer Society. It's super fun and fantastic. So for those of you who are not familiar, my name is Chase Bethea. I am a video game composer, and we're going over some of the benefits of music design during a vertical slice or prototype. I'll be using the words interchangeably, but it'll be mostly the same thing, just in case one of those phrases bothers somebody. So yeah, we can go ahead and hop in and get started. So like I said, I've been working professionally in the industry for about 10 years and shipped over 20 games in that time. Some of those being some of these titles, such as Quest Like Pocket or The Aztec Ride. Most notably, recently won an award for my music for Aground. I was nominated in industry for my score for I Can't Escape. And I've also worked on games such as Potions Please, which is only released in New Zealand, but a ship game is a ship game, and many, many more. But I've had the fortunate opportunity to work on a lot of these games due to being involved early in the process. And so I want to talk about some of the benefits that can stem from that during the game design, prototype, or vertical slice stage. So typically, having these benefits would briefly just cover conceptualized themes that happen in many parts of the project, quick iterations if needed, and saving time and money. Typically, there's a semi-antiquated mentality to bring in audio near the end, and I am trying to educate and formulate a lot of developers of how bringing in, even if you're doing it yourself, prototyping some of the music design early on, how that can just ignite some more inspiration included into the game design, just like writing and art does. Typically, if you hire someone on later and you have like a rush job that you typically would have to do, it might become a little bit more expensive rather than budgeting it out a little bit more early on in that development process and phase, and can also be very beneficial to many production techniques such as optimization, which I'm going to be going over as well. So I just want to kind of get into a couple examples, and one of them being near Gestalt / replicant. Depending on where you are in the world, I won't get into too deep of the etymology of this, but Gestalt was released in the US and Replicant was released in maybe Europe and somewhere else. And it's just a whole development thing that they discussed of why and which, but it's typically the same game. Now with this one, it's a little bit different, but it still pinpoints the purpose of having some design early on in the development, possibly even in the game pitching or game design phase that is even thought of. So the music team, Monaco, is a Japanese team of 5 composers. They wrote the entire score separate from the development of the game. And it was designed to encapsulate different motifs and various arrangements, as well as convey a sense of sadness even during some of the more intense tracks that were happening. And the reason I believe the main developer had done this, I think he was pitching this during the release or sometime around the conception of Drakengard 2 or Drakengard 3, as they wanted to do a reverse format to have the music influence the game entirely. Now, it doesn't mean that and usually when this happens, it's usually a rhythm type of game or some music-based centric game, but not this one. This is 3D open world. And what resulted in this was an extreme cult classic. It's one of the reasons why Nier Automata is so popular to this day, because they built the foundation based off Gestalt / Replicant, and then even the remasters, you see it's that popular where there calls for a remaster to be born. And so what that with the team of the 5 composers, they really just sat down and they came up with their own lyrics. They came up with their own sound, their style of everything that this whole AAA game of, I think, the Square Enix published, designed from scratch. Now, the purpose of that, at least I wasn't on the team, but from my own research, like I said, it typically just moves the mindset out of having something being done in the end, but then putting it towards the beginning and then seeing what you can come up with and look at the popularity that mostly had stemmed from. So I have a couple different examples of in context and so out of context and in context fashion, which I will demonstrate. So we have the out of context, which is just going to be the soundtrack that plays and along on its own until we get to the in context, which you'll see for the gameplay. Let's see if this might go to a different screen. Let me know if this can still be heard. So I'm not going to play the entire example, but you can already get an idea of the instrumentation, these weird but very tantalizing lyrics that pull you into the world without any type of art or knowing what's going on. It's just that as its purest form can possibly be in music format. But notice how they've already kind of set on, like I said, the instrumentation, the voice, the vocals, the person that they were going to be working with. All of this is going to play a really big role within the design when it's happened and when the game was released. So in context, this is how it was implemented.
Are you well? Hello, dearie.
Morning.
Hello, Double O.
Wow, someone looks raring to go this morning.
You know how it is. I'm just trying to earn a living for my little girl.
Take advantage of this moment right here while it loads. Notice how the instrumentation went from the vocals of the person singing to then transforming away from the lyrics as they got further away. And then when he actually spoke to her, the music, she stopped singing completely. This is something that was conceptualized obviously before because they could do that because they already had all the pieces together to do such. And now this is what happened here. Same theme, no vocals, different version. This is something that we can definitely, this is what I was talking about, reusing the themes of optimization. So that's just one example. We're going to jump into another example here. So I've already kind of shown this a bit, but the different person that's singing that you heard is without the guitar. It's just more of like a pad synth type of sound. And when the main character that you're playing is in the library, that iteration or that variation of that track is now played to fit the scene and the area of or space that the main character is in, to replicate just more of like a calm, no lyrics, right? No one's singing. I'm supposed to be talking in the library. It's just very smooth and direct. So we will just kind of move forward from that because I've kind of just already presented that example to you. Now, so asset lists typically happen within or should happen within a prototype vertical slice phase. This is the best form of communication that all team members can have with one another, whether it be for art or for music or for whatever discipline that the person is in to do their role to make that happen. And this just has for me specifically, any sound effects that are needed, everything that for the foundation of what the game is going to actually be to function, to have a decent player experience, outlining different themes, how many different tracks, how long the tracks have to be, the styles, the moods, etc., and very clear and concise communication. For this one specifically, I'm using the example from a ground, and we're going to focus on the title theme. So my job was to create a short but memorable theme played during the title page, perhaps during the ending cutscene / credits. And that was what they told me that I typically need to focus on. So, all right, well, that's all I have to work with. Now, at the same time, I did have a vertical slice, and it was just one island, the same island that everyone starts on to this day, that it just goes back and forth in a 2D format. You're cutting some wood, you're doing whatever. So I already know, and I already have it. It's just bare. There's no audio whatsoever. And so I have to work with that. And so I have a couple examples that while I was making it, actually recorded, and I'm going to share that with you to show you what it looks like from the ground up in terms of the instrumentation, the palette, everything that you're doing with music design to make that world be for what it best as it can be for the vertical slice. All right, so I'm back. I'm going to be that. Go back to here. So I recorded this when I was streaming back in with the date here, August 17th. And yeah, we're gonna be jumping around just a little bit here. So we'll go straight to these points to show you different parts. So at this moment, I'm creating like an ostinato for a feel. I know that I want it to be happy. I know that I want it to feel like you're still moving with momentum. I have that idea already. I just need to kind of convey that into the example. Hopefully this video is still showing and everyone can still hear and see it. So, all right, we're going to try and find the snare now. I think I'm good. Let's see. Yeah, wait, no, the video is not showing. Let me just switch that a bit. Okay, so let me go back to that example. It's better. I'm pulling in different drums. I'm getting different feelings for what it's typically going to be like. You're getting a little bit of a bob. And as we move a little bit forward, exactly what it's going to sound. It should be starting to conceptualize a different part of the percussion. Here I'm trying out a technique for layering so that the player can feel. This is more of, I was thinking of a pickaxe when the person is mining that they're hitting along with. So I'm really digging deep into what I've already seen in the vertical slice and the prototype and accentuating it into the music concepts overall. And as we move forward, let's reverb. Go to here. Forward. Figuring out the baseline, understanding that the undertone of when you're mining underground, how deep and how much depth it can add. So it's just giving me a little bit more of presence. Now, as we continue on. Oh, by here, I realized I didn't like where it was sitting. So I decided to do a modulation, which is just mostly changing the notes into a different tonal center. Sounds a lot more lighter, like more happier. So this makes a big deal. Then by here, I believe I've already conceptualized the melody. But something happened when I was live, when I was recording this, and I want to share that. And it's this, I'm using this instrument. Now this instrument I realize doesn't work. Listen to my reaction. So I even though I had that reaction that I believe I liked it, I still go through to test to see if there's anything better. And then if not, I settle upon the first sound that you typically had heard. So by there, I think it's pretty much done. I don't really have to go too much further with it until I get to the main part. And we'll see that in context from there. So I'm going to switch back to my other slide so you can see. All right, so by this time, we're mapping it out. So we're going to go from someplace other and see how it kind of works in the game. Oops, we went too far. This one. There we go. There we go. So by this time, the demo is out, the vertical slice is done, and the internet goes crazy. They love it. They love the music. It took me 3 months to do it, but worthwhile definitely takes time. So this is the in context format. And like I said, typically what this is, you're seeing mostly what the vertical slice would look like when I had received it. So a couple other examples. This was a visual novel that I scored called Reality. And the gist of it is that it takes elements of a girl that gets selected to try some new VR technology and eventually cannot discern if she wants to stay in the real world or in the VR world because of just what's going on in her life. And there's other players in the game or NPCs in the game that will influence your decision making that you typically will have your own ending towards. I think there's 5 endings, I want to say, at minimum. So I highly suggest you check it out. It's pretty cool. It's pretty in depth, pretty meta too. And so for this one specifically, I was focusing on the design for character design, themes, and motifs. The person that we're designing for was Jacob Lessard. He is one of the arrogant VR Mongols that created a VR MMO that he's doing a beta test for, to have these people come and try out to see if it's worth putting towards market. So he's in his late 20s. He's very focused, but he's cold, he's confident and reserved. He's kind of selfish and childish. And as you see, I'm writing in my journal, this is a scan from my project journal, that at the time I wanted to get an idea of what are the feelings that I can incorporate into the music. And so I take all of these and I write them down, and then I do the same type of process of just choosing instrumentation, figuring out different chord structures or melodies or anything that will kind of go along and be in juxtaposition of how they can align with the game, and then I test it out. So this is it in context. Typically, this is what it would look like in the game. So just going to be the music with a couple of different slides from the game and whatnot. This part here is more of like that arrogant, confident feeling. Like, I got this, I know what's going on. It's got the swagger. So it's going to kind of repeat. So just going to kind of push it forward a little bit and talk about some story scene design. Now, in the same game of reality, there's a point, without any spoilers, that are going to happen, of bridges breaking. And so I took some of the references that was given to me by the developer that was in the asset list sheet, and I just did a mental dump to take down what the tempo was like, other things that they typically would or wouldn't like, and then wanted to design my own feeling for overall glitch effects, different drum and bass patterns from music genres that I can insert in. And then when I write it and I take a break, I think I wrote in the journal lunch, and then I did a bit of modulation, made some tweaks and some adjustments for a better polish. And so this is more of the out of context design from the early concept to then implement into the final design, which would be this, in this form of the music capture of how it sounds from pen and paper to then into the computer of the DAW. Oh no. What happened? Give me just a moment. Okay, I think we should be good. So you can hear that there are reverse, there's stops, there's breaks, then there's still motion happening, even though there's things in between to emphasize that story scene of what's going on at that moment in the game. So, and to the in context, I'm just gonna have like a still picture of just a scene from the game without any extra spoilers or anything. I'm gonna play a different excerpt of the track so you can kind of hear what's kind of going on. So you can hear all those type of random, you have no idea what's going to happen with those effects that are going on. And so that's all purposeful thinking that goes along with that, which is why I took those notes and be able to incorporate it, even though it's not really happening in like a real-time format, but you can see that the bridge is there to give the more of the illusion. So things that I can make up with that the art can't do, I can do with audio, music in tandem. So it's one thing I wanted to just make sure that I point out. So those are all my examples. And like I said, the recap mostly in terms of just having the best music design you can have during the vertical slice. Gives you time to design what the game is asking for. Even though you have things already mapped out, it's best to just try so much and experiment and let your imagination go wild. And you can also catch some of the challenges a little bit sooner in terms of things that may work and definitely don't work. And then if they don't work, and for one instance, even though for your vertical slice or your prototype that you're using, it doesn't mean if you decide to continue development further, you can reuse some of that, and that saves on resources optimization as well, like I mentioned. And also, I realized that it really sparks a great inspiration within the team if you're working with people. They get excited, and that also gives more ideas for different art directions, how like we saw things being conceptualized with near gestalt slash replicant, or anything like that I've probably mostly encountered with the ground or reality and other projects. Now I'm still doing the same techniques. I got way more examples. I couldn't fit it all into a crash course, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Until then, thank you so much.
All right. All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, can you hear me?
Excellent, excellent. All right. So thank you for that, Chase. I feel like we got a lot of information there, just in terms of how audio can really influence the background or the experience behind a game, even from the very early stages, from like a vertical slice. I think that showcased it really well. Personally, I kind of got daunted once you started pulling up some of the more technical apps. All those knobs really throw me off a bit. But this is why we have you and your expertise. So thank you for that. Now, guys, I just want to give you room to post or put any questions that you may have to Chase directly. If you're not comfortable speaking up, we can use the chat. Use the Crash Course chat and just post your questions, and we can just spend some time going through it.
Well, I am comfortable speaking up. I'd like to say, excellent presentation. I really love the music. I really love the process. That was very enlightening. Thank you, sir. Again, I say thank you for actually being here and giving us that insight into the process. So my question would be, how long does it normally take you to create a soundtrack for a game? Like, say, if you were working on a AAA project, what would you say?
Well, I start off by asking how much music is absolutely needed to have the experience be direct to the player, meaning what do they need to feel and what does it take. So if that means it's only 2 tracks, just a title theme and a main theme is going to be looped forever and ever and ever, and then maybe one scene of something that is really important, then that's that. But typically, on average, development cycles vary. I can finish entire game soundtrack in less than a year, or I can finish one in 2.5 years. It just depends on the game development cycle. My writing style can go from a track a day to a track a month. It just depends how much is going on.
Okay, thank you. That was very enlightening.
Thank you for your question.
I have a question. Just out of curiosity, how many games at max, I guess, have you ever worked on at one time?
I've worked on about 5 games at once. And a few years ago, there was about 3, but definitely I would have to say 5 at one time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I've never understood, like, of course, as a developer, I'd love to try and work on multiple games at once, but it's impossible. But then I figure if you're focused on like sound design or on art or one thing, it is possible to juggle different projects. So I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to expand on that really quickly and say the reason like I said, is because I mean we're all developers here. The development cycle changes all the time, right? So even though it also it goes a lot with inspiration and obviously things that we have to do on our day to day. But I find it healthy to kind of at least work on two different ones, and with the systemic approach of how things are scheduled, things that we like at AAA levels, they get delayed all the time, right? So you think a game is going to come out in 2 years, it comes out 4 years from now. So I mean, it's always crunch in that area, which is terrible. But if that extra time is there and you utilize that time to just insert pockets to do other projects and interweave and get refreshed and take breaks as needed. So that's typically, it's just more of just navigating how and where those and anticipating when those delays are going to happen, but also being proactive as possible. So when you don't feel like working, even if you just, like for me in a music concept, if I just do one measure or 4 measures and I end up right and I sit and that takes me 10 minutes or it takes me an hour, I at least did 4 measures. So some progress was made. And I think just thinking of it on a micro scale rather than a macro scale typically helps the momentum of game development go a little bit more smoothly.
Gotcha. It's a great answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also didn't really think about it sometimes taking like 4 or 5 years for the game to ship. I mean, obviously that always happens, but like I've never thought about it within your space.
Yeah, it happens more often. It happens all the time. It does. It's typically, if publishers take a while to get back to other people, or something happened with the bugs, or someone got sick, or I mean, it happens. It's part of life. So life has to be included into those cycle schedules.
Right.
And many more other things.
All right, I'm seeing a question in chat from Macaroni. Saying, how do you stay original with your music knowing that it's hard to create something different or unique? As in, how exactly do you ensure that, I guess it's how do you stay, do you come up with ideas? How do you stay authentic? And how do you not run out of gas, I guess? Correct me if I'm wrong if that's not the question there, Macaroni, but you can also check in chat, Chase.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing, so staying original with your music, knowing it's hard to create something different or unique. Today's music is mainly remixes or just reusing other music with extra stuff added. Yeah, there is. So for me personally, I don't know, I realize that I don't know everything, and I accept that. That being said, I get excited about learning what I don't know. And sometimes that deviates away from music theory, music knowledge. Sometimes it's about learning about ant behavior, like ants and their colonies, or sometimes it involves an experience in my life that I typically didn't expect, right? Or like a passing in the family, or something that I need to fix that I'm not super familiar with, like the door fell off my hinge in my house, right? Something just, but I take the time to research and learn how to navigate that space and grow and separate what I need to do. But I also incorporate those experiences into my music somehow. So when I'm ready to write, I can recall that feeling. And what I noticed was those experiences help push the sound forward. Here is why. All the games we do in development, they tell stories. In some form or fashion, they tell a story in some kind of way. So if I'm adding the story musically, or through my experiences of loss, or of a challenge that I didn't really know how to get through, it comes through because it's an emotion that I'm putting in. The best example is I went through a very terrible breakup during the reality project. Well, if you're listening closely to Bricks in Motion, you can hear I'm singing in it. And the other thing is there's lots of emotional things happening in the game that I was able to conflate at that moment because of a depression and the things going on in my life with trying to find housing and all this other stuff while still trying to ship a game and ship it on time. It doesn't matter. I had extra time. I was still in my senior year of college, and the game has to ship regardless. The people spent their money. So with that, I think just comes the experience, always learning, growing, learning new things, like I mentioned, even if it's reading books about the galaxy and how things are formed. It's just weird stuff, but my mind just kind of goes there anyway because I'm just very curious. And like I said, since I accept that I don't know everything, I take everything that I do learn with those experiences and incorporate in there. I think that's how I stay fresh, along with taking breaks. I take a lot more breaks now than I ever have before. I would used to take intermittent breaks where I would just watch a movie for 2 hours or go take a walk or watch whatever and things like that. So now I have different things that help me, which is just I don't write music for a week, and that really helps. Now you're like, well, how do you figure that out on a schedule? Well, then yes, I do have to play a little bit of catch up, but I don't overthink the process. I let it happen and I let it flow through me. And that's something I don't hear talked about a lot, but a lot of people really should just definitely practice. Just sit down and let it go through you so you can just have it externally put out, and then it's not resonating or festering within you forever. Super long answer to say I just take breaks and learn.
No, I don't think that was too long an answer. I mean, it was a weighty question, I think. And I feel like there's a lot of that is actually applicable just across the board, regardless of discipline. Just take breaks and learn from what you know, from your own experience. Because what you're doing right now is art after a fashion. Even if it's code that you're looking at, you are solving problems in a way that's unique to you. Right. So learn, grow, and be kind to yourself. I also have a question, in case nobody else has one. And I'm not sure if you touched on it in depth. In your presentation, you kind of focus on background music. But I know from personal experience that you also work on SFX assets and such. How useful is that, like, incorporating in like a vertical slice or as early as possible for a particular project?
Yeah, so for sound effects or SFX, they for short, I feel like they're extremely paramount because that's player feedback on the dime. And no matter what, it tells you what's happening before anything else. If a jump is happening or if you miss something, if it's just the most potent feedback you can have. It's the other 50% of the experience that you typically need to convey. And so it's important that you think about at least, like I said, the foundation and what's needed, and that circumvents that so that it has a sonic identity. People should be able to discern what game is being played when. So for the most popular, people know what Fortnite sounds right? Because before there was music, there was only sounds. I mean, you could be in somewhere down the street, and if it was the loudest speaker on the block, you'd know based off the sound effects that person's playing Fortnite. Or back in the day in the arcades, if someone is playing, if they said, fatality, that it was Mortal Kombat. Or if they had different punch sounds or whatever the case may be, mobile games like Candy Crush, there's different specific cues that give that. Yes, exactly, like Pac-Man sounds. That if you hear it would be Pac-Man. Right. So it gives that sonic identity, and that's what you typically want, and that's mostly player feedback at 101's core. And yeah, it's super important to just think about those things and conceptualize those early, so that you're not really scrambling to think about it later. And they can happen as fast as thoughts. So if you think about it, and even if you don't think it will work, write it down, put it in the sheet or however you are documenting to say this would be this, and you can always change it later. But at least you have something put down so that you can reference it in the future.
All right. Thank you for that. Going to open the floor for any additional questions. Any more questions? Seeing chat very quiet. All right. Well, with that, I think we can probably wrap up. If nobody else has any further no questions right now, they can put it in chat. I think you are going to hang around on the Discord a little bit longer. I just want to say again, thank you, Chase, for taking the time out. The presentation was great. We should have the session recorded, so all the late bugs we'll be posting it up on YouTube for everyone to see afterwards. And yeah, Chase, if you want to just share your socials for where everybody can follow you and see your work.
Sure. I'll verbally say them, but you can follow me on Twitter at Chase Bethea, or if you go to chasebethea.com, you can follow me on YouTube or Twitter, like I said, Instagram, Spotify, and put in just my first and last name. You can pick your social of choice. It's all there.
All right, excellent. All right, man. Just want to say thanks again. Again, I keep saying that a lot, but it really means a lot that you come through and just be a part of the community. I think everyone here definitely appreciates it. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been quite an honor and a lot of fun.